The Disney parks have a long and proud tradition of live characters, including ones that you really wouldn't expect to see there. Did you know at one point you could meet the Ninja Turtles, the Power Rangers, and even Tom and Jerry at Disney World? Or how at one point you could have been walking around Main Street at Disneyland, and suddenly you'd see the Phantom of the Opera? I swear to God I'm not making any of this up. This all really happened. Though perhaps there are no group of rare Disney characters more noteworthy than the Disneyland Mermaids. But who were these bonny sirens? What purpose did they serve in the land? And why were they removed? Well, let's dive into fathoms below to find out what lies beneath the surface. Let's face it, ladies, we love mermaids. Even if you, specifically, don't like mermaids, chances are that a woman you know does. And that's not to say that anyone of any other gender can't like mermaids, but it's hard to deny they're highly associated with women. It's right there in the name, mermaid. And it's not just a little girl thing either. Go to your local dollar store and try to see if you can find any Little Mermaid knickknacks for adults. It won't be hard. As for why, that's a more complicated question to unpack. You could write an entire thesis paper on why we're so enamored with mermaids. Part of it might be a power fantasy. Historically, mermaids have been seen as dangerous, luring men to their doom. Using patriarchal beauty standards and traditional femininity to their advantage is a power move. Plus, mermaids themselves aren't constrained to anything and are free to just swim around untethered to society. Hey, that's the same reason why cottagecore is a thing. And of course, a lot of girls grow up with media centered around mermaids, and that's gonna have an impact on their tastes as they get older. Wait, don't click away. I promise this isn't gonna be the whole video. Please scroll away from the comment section before you type something rash. Anyways, when Tomorrowland opened at Disneyland, it was pretty barren. Aside from Autopia and Rocket to the Moon, it was mainly made of exhibits. It remained that way until 1959, when the first e-ticket attractions opened in the area. These included the monorail, the Matterhorn bobsleds, and the submarine voyage. The submarine voyage took residency in the Tomorrowland Lagoon, previously home to some dinky little boats. The attraction was a journey under the sea, seeing some amazing sights along the way. The voyage was inspired by real-life adventures of the USS Nautilus and the 1954 film adaptation of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. The ride was a success and added a lot of atmosphere to the area. With new attractions came new streetmosphere elements. Streetmosphere are actors and performers who portray certain characters as if they live in the area they work. Think like this is the main streets or the cast members at Galaxy's Edge. They make the area feel more real and lived in, heightening your immersion. These kinds of characters have existed in Disneyland since the beginning, and were once again implemented with the new expansion. You had mountain climbers at the Matterhorn, and mermaids in the lagoon. Before the ride opened, actresses were auditioned at the Disneyland Hotel's pool. The fins were provided, they just had to prove they could swim in them. According to one woman, 40 showed up to the auditions. 8 women were chosen and soon made their Disneyland debut when the submarine voyage opened in 1959. They swam with the submarines, waved to the guests, and even performed a little synchronized swim routine at the opening ceremony. Not only that, but some of them appeared in a parade that same day, throwing necklaces at guests watching from the sidelines. I couldn't find exact info about how long the mermaids initially appeared in Disneyland, but they were brought back in 1965 to celebrate the park's 10th anniversary. And they were so popular that they were brought back again in 1966 and 1967. The mermaids went through extensive training, meeting each afternoon at the hotel to practice. The practices went up to the last minute in traditional Disney fashion. They were dressed in halter tops and matching tails, with each girl in different colors. The water was very cold, so they stayed on the rocks, basking in the sunlight for most of the day, and waved at guests while they laid. They swam on and off for about 2 hours at a time, with 45-minute breaks in between. I have to imagine that this was unlike anything most people had seen before. People must have been blown away by this. They added a unique atmosphere to the area. More importantly, they helped bridge a gap between two lands. Mermaids were swimming in the submarines. Fantasy and technology were combined, bridging Fantasyland with Tomorrowland. Perfectly balanced, as all things should be. So why were they short-lived? These seemed like a perfect addition to the atmosphere. Why get rid of them? There are a few reasons I could pin down. First of all, the safety optics weren't that great. Mermaids swam pretty close to the ride vehicles. One wrong kick and they could get hit by one of the submarines or worse. So that's a giant liability. Plus, being in the chlorine-filled water all day caused some of the girls' hair to get bleached and turn green. I double-checked and yeah, chlorine can do that to human hair. So I imagine that raised a lot of health concerns, which is why chlorine is no longer used in the Disney water rides. There was also, inappropriate behavior from guests. There were stories of men doing everything from hooting and hollering at girls to throwing money at them, which must have been a gigantic nuisance. Some guests were a lot more persistent and buck wild, going as far as diving into the lagoon to meet them. None of them made it all the way, but that's still nuts to think about. Humanity has always been horny, don't let anyone try to tell you otherwise. But I imagine that might have been a factor as well. For all those reasons, and possibly more, the mermaids were retired and have never been seen since. But fret not, mermaid fans, for you could have still seen mermaids in the actual ride. Animatronic figures of mermaids, but mermaids nonetheless. When it came to the making and upkeep of the figures, Imagineers faced a lot of the same issues that the girls were having. The colors, especially on the hair, faded really quickly in the chlorine water, so all the vivid colors they had put down were gone within a few weeks. Imagineer and Disney legend Harriet Burns recalled the following. I dyed the hair all sorts of colors because we wanted them pink and green and purple, and everything faded. Finally, I took straight Clorox bleach. I put them in fruit jars and put the hair after I dyed it in the fruit jars. It lasted 2 weeks and I thought that was pretty darn good. So that's what I used, and it faded out in no time in that pool because of the sun's reaction with the chlorine and everything in it. So we had to have it extruded with pigment in it, and I had to make new wigs for them. In the attraction, the narrator is talking about sea creatures, like serpents and mermaids, but he insists that it's all fiction. That is, until he sees one out the window. He asks the crew member if the air pressure is working correctly, and it is. Ever the skeptic, he still thinks it's an hallucination. The mermaid scene was reproduced when the submarine voyage was brought to the Magic Kingdom, as 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea submarine voyage. A crew member of the Nautilus spotted one, but Captain Nemo dismissed it, saying that he'd been submerged for too long. And when Captain Nemo of all goddamn people is telling you to go to the surface, you know it's bad. Quick side note, as said before, much of the original submarine voyage was inspired by 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. You can see it with the diver scene and the Atlantis scene, and especially with the giant squid scene. However, the mermaids were added just for the ride, and were not pulled from the source material. No mermaids appeared in the film, and the only mention we get of them in the book is when Kansai and Ned mistake dugongs for them. The mermaid scene is less 20,000 Leagues and more King Neptune. I know that's a really pedantic thing to talk about, but I just wanted to bring it up. However, even these mermaids wouldn't last. They bid their final goodbyes in 1998, when the original submarine voyage departed for good. The ride closed and was left to rot for years until 2007, when the Finding Nemo submarine voyage opened in its place. This meant all the mermaids were permanently removed, as there were no mermaids in Finding Nemo. At least one of them was sold in an auction several years ago. I couldn't find the whereabouts of the other ones, though. My guess is that they're either sitting in some Disney warehouse or they were scrapped for parks. Or they might be sitting in some private collection somewhere. If anyone out there knows what happened to the rest of the figures, please let me know down in the comments. That's not to say that Disneyland is entirely devoid of mermaids nowadays. Peter Pan's Flight shows Mermaid Lagoon with a group of mermaids lounging around. Look for them near the end of the attraction. Once as figures, and again on the Merle on the exit. And of course there's Ariel. She's all over the place. I don't think she's ever been in the water like the submarine mermaids, but she has that same style of fin whenever she does her meet and greets. And she even has her own ride. And it's really lame, and the animatronics are kinda bad. Sorry to people who like this ride, but it's true. But even without our submarine girls, you can still go to Disneyland and get your mermaid fix. The Disneyland Mermaids were an interesting addition to the park. They weren't the most practical, or cost-effective, or safe. However, they're still fondly remembered by those who were there to see them, and added a unique atmosphere to the area, bridging the gap between two lands and adding a more magical element to what could have been a super serial attraction. And even if it's totally understandable why they were retired, I hope they won't be forgotten. They surely gave their guests a whale of a tale to tell when they got home. Yeah, I know I've used that closing line before, shut up. Anyways, that concludes the video. Thanks for watching. Now I'll pass the question off to you. What do you think of all this? Were any of you actually there to see the mermaids in person? Whatever you're thinking, let me know down in the comments. But that's all the time we've got for today. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I will talk to you guys soon. Take care.